The elderly black man sitting on the sidewalk outside the music store looked up with weathered eyes as Dave Grohl approached. "Excuse me, sir, can you spare $1?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying decades of disappointment but still maintaining dignity. What Dave did next would shock everyone watching and change both their lives forever. Instead of walking past or dropping a coin, Dave stopped completely, crouched down to eye level, and said something that made the homeless man's eyes fill with tears. A simple request for $1 had just become the beginning of the most unexpected friendship either man could have imagined. But to understand how this moment came to define both their futures, we need to go back to earlier that morning when Dave had decided to walk instead of drive to his appointment at Vintage Guitar Works in downtown Seattle. The October air was crisp, and he'd been feeling restless after weeks of studio work, needing the rhythm of walking to clear his creative mind and reconnect with the city streets. Dave had always been drawn to the energy of urban environments, finding inspiration in the diverse stories that played out on busy sidewalks. Seattle held special significance for him, representing both his musical roots and the authentic, unpretentious culture that had shaped his artistic identity. Walking these streets reminded him of his early days when success was just a dream, and human connection mattered more than fame. The music store visit was routine maintenance, checking on a vintage drum kit he'd been considering for an upcoming recording project. Dave preferred handling such business personally rather than sending assistants, enjoying the conversations with shop owners who shared his passion for musical instruments and their histories. These interactions kept him grounded in the craft rather than the celebrity aspect of his career. As Dave approached the familiar storefront on Pine Street, he noticed the figure sitting against the brick wall beside the entrance. The elderly man was positioned with careful consideration, not blocking foot traffic but visible enough for passers-by to acknowledge if they chose. His cardboard sign was handwritten in neat letters, "Homeless veteran, anything helps, God bless." His military posture was evident even while seated. The man appeared to be in his 70s, his dark skin weathered by years of exposure to the elements, his gray beard neatly trimmed despite his circumstances. He wore layers of clean but worn clothing, a faded military jacket prominent among them. Something about his dignified bearing reminded Dave of his own grandfather, another veteran who had carried himself with quiet pride regardless of his struggles. Most pedestrians walked past without acknowledgement, their eyes averted or focused on their phones, the invisible barrier between housed and unhoused creating a bubble of separation. Dave had witnessed this dynamic countless times in cities across the world, understanding how easy it was to become numb to individual suffering when surrounded by urban anonymity. Yet something about this particular man's presence demanded attention. The homeless man, whose name was Samuel Washington, had been sitting in this spot for 3 weeks, choosing the location because the music store's owner occasionally offered him water and allowed him to use the restroom. At 72 years old, Samuel had been living on the streets for 8 months after losing his subsidized housing due to bureaucratic complications with his disability benefits from his Vietnam service. Samuel had served 2 tours in Vietnam as an army medic, earning commendations for treating wounded soldiers under fire. After his discharge, he'd worked as a hospital orderly for 30 years before age and untreated PTSD made steady employment impossible. The system that had once relied on his service had somehow failed to catch him when he fell, leaving him to navigate homelessness with the same quiet determination he'd once shown in combat. On this particular morning, Samuel was feeling the weight of his situation more acutely than usual. His arthritis was flaring from sleeping on concrete, his benefits check was delayed again, and the approaching winter threatened to make survival even more challenging. Yet, he maintained his practice of greeting each person who passed, hoping for small connections that reminded him of his humanity amid circumstances that often made him feel invisible. When Dave approached the music store entrance, Samuel looked up with the same hopeful expression he offered everyone, not recognizing the famous musician beneath the baseball cap and casual clothes. "Excuse me, sir," Samuel said politely, his voice carrying the respectful tone he'd learned in military service. "Can you spare $1?" The request was simple, humble, and delivered without expectation or demand, just one human being asking another for basic help. Dave stopped immediately, something in Samuel's voice and bearing catching his full attention. Instead of the hurried response most people gave to such requests, Dave took a moment to really look at the man before him. He noticed the military jacket, the careful grooming despite difficult circumstances, the way Samuel maintained eye contact without aggression or manipulation, signs of someone struggling but not defeated. "What's your name?" Dave asked, crouching down to Samuel's eye level rather than looking down at him from above. The gesture immediately changed the dynamic from charity to conversation, treating Samuel as an equal worthy of respect rather than an object of pity. Samuel was surprised by the question, accustomed to being ignored or receiving hurried donations without personal acknowledgement. "Samuel Washington, sir," he replied, straightening slightly as military training kicked in when addressing someone who showed him respect. "I served in Vietnam, Army medic." The introduction carried pride despite his current circumstances, identifying himself first by his service rather than his homelessness. Dave nodded with genuine interest, recognizing the dignity Samuel maintained even in his vulnerable situation. "Thank you for your service, Samuel," Dave said sincerely, the phrase carrying more weight than the casual acknowledgments veterans often received. "I'm Dave. Tell me about your situation. What's brought you here?" The question was asked with genuine curiosity rather than judgment, inviting Samuel to share his story rather than simply asking for money or offering quick sympathy. Samuel found himself opening up to this stranger who seemed genuinely interested in his circumstances. He briefly explained the housing loss, the delayed benefits, the challenge of navigating bureaucracy without a permanent address. Dave listened without interruption, his attention focused entirely on Samuel's words rather than checking his phone or scanning for distractions, a level of presence that Samuel hadn't experienced in months. As Samuel talked, Dave learned about his medical training, his decades of hospital work, his struggle with PTSD symptoms that had worsened with age and stress. The story revealed not a victim seeking handouts, but a skilled professional temporarily derailed by circumstances beyond his control. Dave began to see possibilities rather than just problems, his mind working on solutions that went far beyond the requested $1. "Samuel, I've got an idea," Dave said after listening to the full story. "Instead of giving you $1, what if I bought you breakfast and we talked about some other options?" The offer surprised Samuel, who was accustomed to receiving small change or being ignored entirely. The suggestion of a meal and conversation represented recognition of his humanity rather than just his immediate need. Samuel accepted the invitation with gratitude and curiosity, gathering his few belongings as Dave waited patiently. The music store appointment could wait. This conversation felt more important than any business transaction. As they walked toward a nearby diner, Dave noticed how Samuel moved with purpose despite his age and circumstances, his military bearing evident in his stride and posture. At the diner, Dave chose a corner booth where they could talk privately, allowing Samuel to maintain dignity while sharing his story in detail. The waitress treated them with professional courtesy, Dave's demeanor making it clear that Samuel was his guest rather than someone he was helping out of obligation. The subtle difference in framing mattered enormously to Samuel's sense of self-worth. Over breakfast, Samuel shared more about his medical background, describing his years treating patients and his natural ability to connect with people in crisis. Dave listened with growing respect, understanding that he was sitting across from someone whose skills and experience represented valuable resources rather than deficits. The conversation shifted from charity to possibility as they discussed Samuel's strengths and interests. Dave learned that Samuel had been trying to navigate the VA system to restore his benefits and secure housing, but the process was complicated by his lack of permanent address and difficulty accessing required appointments. The bureaucratic obstacles seemed designed to frustrate rather than assist, leaving Samuel caught in cycles of paperwork and waiting that led nowhere while his situation deteriorated. "I know some people who might be able to help with that," Dave said, thinking of contacts he'd made through various charitable activities over the years. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing which doors to knock on and having someone advocate for you. Samuel's eyes brightened at the suggestion of assistance, navigating systems that had proven impenetrable when faced alone. As their conversation continued, Dave found himself increasingly impressed by Samuel's wisdom, humor, and resilience. Despite months of homelessness and years of struggle, Samuel maintained optimism about the future and genuine concern for others in similar situations. His stories from medical work revealed someone who had spent decades caring for others, now needing care himself through no fault of his own. Dave's phone buzzed with reminders about his delayed appointment, but he ignored them, recognizing that this conversation was evolving into something more significant than a charitable gesture. Samuel represented not just someone needing help, but someone whose experience and perspective could contribute value if given appropriate opportunities. The interaction was becoming reciprocal, rather than one-sided. "Samuel, I want to run something by you," Dave said as they finished eating. "I'm involved with some organizations that work with veterans, and I think your medical background and life experience could be really valuable in helping other people navigate similar challenges. Would you be interested in exploring that possibility while we work on getting your housing situation resolved?" The suggestion that his experience could benefit others, rather than simply receiving charity, transformed Samuel's understanding of his circumstances. Instead of seeing himself as a burden requiring assistance, he began to envision contributing solutions based on his unique combination of medical training, military service, and recent experience with homelessness. The reframing restored his sense of purpose and dignity. Samuel's enthusiasm for the possibility was evident as he described ideas for helping other veterans navigate the system, drawing on his medical knowledge to identify health issues that complicated housing applications, and using his street experience to connect with people who had given up hope. Dave recognized that Samuel's perspective represented exactly the kind of insight that traditional service organizations often lacked. Dave made several phone calls while Samuel listened, reaching out to contacts at veteran service organizations, homeless advocacy groups, and people he knew in local government. The conversations revealed Dave's genuine commitment to creating sustainable solutions rather than temporary fixes. Samuel watched with amazement as doors began opening through connections he could never have accessed alone. Within 2 hours, Dave had arranged for Samuel to meet with a veteran service advocate who specialized in benefits restoration, scheduled an appointment with a housing program specifically designed for older veterans, and connected him with a nonprofit that utilized peer counselors with lived experience to help others navigate homelessness. The rapid progress felt miraculous after months of bureaucratic deadlock. But Dave wasn't finished. "Here's what I'm thinking for the immediate term," he said, pulling out his wallet. "Instead of that dollar you asked for, let me cover a hotel room for you for the next week while these appointments get sorted out. You need a stable address to complete the paperwork, and you need rest to be at your best for these meetings." Samuel stared at Dave in disbelief as he counted out enough cash to cover a week's lodging at a clean, safe hotel near the Veteran Services office. The gesture went far beyond charity. It represented investment in Samuel's success, providing the foundation he needed to rebuild, rather than simply surviving another day. The kindness felt overwhelming after months of indifference from society. "I don't know what to say," Samuel managed, his voice thick with emotion. "I asked for $1, and you're giving me hope." Dave shook his head with a smile. "You're giving me something too, Samuel. You're reminding me what really matters, and showing me how one person's story can change everything. This isn't charity. It's recognition of your worth and investment in what you can contribute." As they prepared to leave the diner, Dave wrote his personal phone number on a napkin. "I want you to stay in touch about how these appointments go," he said. "And I'm serious about exploring ways you can help other people. Sometimes the best advocates are those who've walked the path themselves." Samuel carefully folded the napkin, understanding it represented more than contact information. It was proof of connection and ongoing commitment. The walk to the hotel was filled with conversation about Samuel's military service, his medical career, and his observations about homelessness that could inform better policies and programs. Dave found himself taking mental notes, recognizing that Samuel's insights could contribute to his own charitable activities and advocacy efforts. The relationship was becoming genuinely collaborative rather than simply supportive. At the hotel, Dave handled the check-in process and payment, while Samuel waited nearby, maintaining his dignity by not being directly involved in the financial transaction. The room was modest but clean and safe, representing luxury beyond measure after months of sleeping outdoors. Samuel stood in the doorway for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple comfort of 4 walls and a bed. "Get some rest. Take care of those appointments and call me with updates," Dave said before leaving. "I mean it about staying in touch. I have a feeling this is the beginning of something important for both of us." Samuel nodded, still processing how completely his circumstances had changed in the span of a few hours through one person's decision to see him as fully human. That evening, Samuel sat on the hotel bed, making a list of everything that had happened, trying to process the surreal transformation of his day. The comfortable room, the upcoming appointments, the possibility of meaningful work, all of it traced back to one stranger's decision to stop and listen rather than hurry past. He fell asleep that night with hope he hadn't felt in months. Dave, meanwhile, found himself energized by the encounter in ways he hadn't expected. Samuel's story had reminded him of the power of direct personal intervention and the difference between systematic charity and individual connection. He spent the evening researching veteran homelessness statistics and thinking about ways to expand the kind of help he'd provided to Samuel. The next morning, Samuel attended his first appointment with the Veteran Service Advocate. Armed with documentation Dave had helped him organize and the confidence that came from having support. The advocate was impressed by Samuel's preparedness and the quality of referrals Dave had provided, understanding immediately that this case had powerful backing that would help cut through bureaucratic delays. Samuel's benefits restoration process, which had been stalled for months, suddenly began moving rapidly through the system. The advocate's connections and Dave's influence created momentum that transformed impossible obstacles into manageable steps. Within days, Samuel received confirmation that his delayed benefits would be restored and back payments would be processed to cover his period of homelessness. The housing appointment yielded similar success, with Samuel qualifying for a program that provided transitional housing specifically designed for older veterans. The apartment wasn't luxurious, but it offered safety, stability, and the permanent address he needed to complete his benefits restoration. The speed of progress felt almost miraculous after months of bureaucratic frustration and delay. Throughout this process, Samuel stayed in regular contact with Dave, sharing updates and expressing gratitude for the intervention that had changed his trajectory. Dave listened to each development with genuine interest and satisfaction, understanding that Samuel's success represented more than individual charity. It demonstrated what was possible when people with resources chose to invest personally in solutions rather than writing checks to distant organizations. 2 weeks after their initial meeting, Samuel moved into his transitional apartment with assistance from the Veteran Services Program. Dave stopped by to help with the move, bringing basic household supplies and furniture that transformed the empty space into a home. The gesture extended their relationship beyond crisis intervention into ongoing friendship and mutual support. As Samuel settled into stable housing, he began volunteering with the same organizations that had helped him, using his medical background and recent experience with homelessness to assist other veterans navigating similar challenges. His peer counseling proved remarkably effective, combining professional expertise with lived experience in ways that helped people who had given up hope on the system. Dave began attending some of Samuel's volunteer activities, impressed by his friend's natural ability to connect with people in crisis and guide them toward resources. Samuel's approach combined the efficiency of medical training with the empathy of someone who had personally experienced systemic failures. His success rate in helping people secure benefits and housing exceeded that of many professional caseworkers. The nonprofit organization where Samuel volunteered quickly recognized his value, offering him a paid position as a peer specialist within 3 months of his volunteer start date. The job provided steady income, health benefits, and the satisfaction of meaningful work that utilized all aspects of his experience. Samuel had transformed from service recipient to service provider in less than 6 months. Dave's initial investment of hotel money and connections had multiplied into sustainable employment, stable housing, and restored dignity for Samuel. But the impact extended beyond individual transformation. Samuel's success story began inspiring other veterans and demonstrating the effectiveness of combining personal attention with systematic support. Their partnership had created a model for meaningful intervention. As Samuel's first year of stability progressed, he and Dave developed a deeper friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to helping others. Their regular meetings evolved from progress updates to brainstorming sessions about expanding veteran services and addressing homelessness more effectively. Samuel's insights informed Dave's charitable activities, while Dave's resources amplified Samuel's advocacy efforts. Samuel's work caught the attention of city officials and veteran service organizations across the region, leading to speaking engagements where he shared his story and recommendations for policy improvements. His transformation from homeless veteran to recognized advocate demonstrated the potential that existed within every person experiencing homelessness when provided appropriate support and opportunities. Dave often accompanied Samuel to these speaking events, not as the celebrity who had rescued him, but as a friend and collaborator in addressing veteran homelessness. Their partnership illustrated the power of relationships that transcended charity to become genuine collaboration between people with different resources but shared values and commitment to service. 1 year after their initial meeting outside the music store, Samuel had helped over 200 veterans navigate the benefit system, secure housing, and access medical care. His success rate far exceeded traditional case management approaches because his clients trusted someone who had walked their path and understood their challenges from personal experience. His reputation as an effective advocate grew throughout the veteran community. Dave's understanding of homelessness and veteran issues had been transformed through his friendship with Samuel, leading to more informed and effective charitable giving. Instead of writing checks to distant organizations, he began investing in direct relationships and supporting programs that utilized peer specialists like Samuel. His approach became more personal and strategic, guided by Samuel's insights about what actually worked to help people transition from crisis to stability. The music store where they had first met became a regular stop for both men, with the owner documenting their story and using it to inspire other customers to notice and assist homeless individuals in their community. Samuel occasionally held informal counseling sessions outside the store, helping other veterans while Dave conducted business inside, their parallel activities, demonstrating how ordinary locations could become centers of community support. Samuel's expertise in peer counseling led to consulting opportunities with veteran service organizations nationwide, his success story and practical insights making him a sought-after speaker and program developer. His recommendations for improving services were based on lived experience rather than theoretical knowledge, making them particularly valuable for organizations seeking to improve their effectiveness with hard-to-reach populations. Dave's involvement in Samuel's advocacy work introduced him to aspects of veteran homelessness he had never understood, deepening his commitment to systematic change rather than individual charity. Their collaboration demonstrated how celebrity resources could be most effectively utilized, not through high-profile donations but through personal relationships that created lasting change and informed broader advocacy efforts. 2 years after their meeting, Samuel was hired as the director of a new peer specialist program designed to replicate his success across multiple cities. The position represented recognition of his expertise and leadership rather than just his personal story. acknowledging that his combination of medical training, military service, and homelessness experience had created unique qualifications for addressing veteran crisis. The program Samuel designed emphasized immediate relationship building, followed by systematic support, replicating the approach Dave had used with him on their first day. Peer specialists were trained to see each person's potential rather than just their problems, focusing on strengths and possibilities while addressing immediate needs. The model proved remarkably effective in helping people transition from homelessness to stability. Dave served on the advisory board for Samuel's program, contributing financial support and helping recruit other donors who were interested in evidence-based approaches to homelessness rather than traditional charity models. His involvement lent credibility to the program while ensuring that Samuel's innovations received adequate funding and administrative support to achieve maximum impact. As the program expanded to additional cities, Samuel and Dave began traveling together to train new peer specialists and educate community leaders about effective approaches to veteran homelessness. Their partnership had evolved into a collaborative advocacy effort that reached thousands of people annually, all tracing back to the decision to stop and listen rather than walk past someone asking for $1. Samuel's personal transformation remained remarkable, but had become secondary to his professional impact on veteran services nationwide. His story demonstrated that homelessness represented temporary circumstances rather than permanent conditions when people received appropriate support and opportunities. His success challenged stereotypes about both homelessness and aging, showing that experience and wisdom could emerge from struggle. The relationship between Dave and Samuel had become genuinely reciprocal, with each man contributing different resources to their shared advocacy work. Dave provided financial support, celebrity connections, and platforms for reaching wider audiences, while Samuel contributed expertise, credibility with veteran populations, and practical insights about effective interventions. Their collaboration maximized the impact of both their individual strengths. 3 years after their initial meeting, Samuel published a book about his experience with homelessness and recovery, co-authored with Dave, that became a standard resource for veteran service organizations and homelessness advocates. The book combined Samuel's personal narrative with practical recommendations for policymakers, service providers, and community members wanting to make meaningful differences in addressing veteran homelessness. The book's success led to a documentary film about Samuel's transformation and the broader issues of veteran homelessness, with Dave serving as executive producer while ensuring that Samuel remained the central focus. The film's distribution through Dave's entertainment industry connections brought national attention to veteran services and peer specialist approaches, amplifying Samuel's advocacy beyond what either man could have achieved alone. Samuel's influence on veteran services policy reached the federal level when he was invited to testify before Congress about effective approaches to veteran homelessness. His recommendations, based on personal experience and professional success, influenced funding decisions and program requirements for veteran service organizations nationwide. The man who had once asked for $1 was now shaping national policy. Dave's approach to charitable giving had been permanently altered by his friendship with Samuel, leading him to focus on building relationships rather than writing checks. He began mentoring other celebrities and wealthy individuals about effective philanthropy, using Samuel's story to illustrate the difference between charity and investment in human potential. Their partnership had become a teaching tool for strategic giving. The peer specialist program Samuel had designed was recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs as a model for nationwide implementation, with Samuel appointed to oversee the expansion. His transition from homeless veteran to federal program director demonstrated the potential that existed within every person experiencing crisis when provided appropriate support and opportunities to contribute their unique expertise. 5 years after their meeting, Samuel and Dave established a foundation dedicated to identifying and supporting individuals whose life experiences had created expertise that could benefit others facing similar challenges. The foundation operated on the principle that those who had overcome significant obstacles possessed valuable insights that should be recognized and utilized, rather than overlooked or dismissed. The Foundation's first major initiative created fellowships for people with lived experience of homelessness, addiction, mental health challenges, and other social issues, providing them with resources and platforms to develop their expertise into professional contributions. Samuel's story had proven that personal struggle could become professional strength when properly supported and recognized. Samuel's health remained strong despite his age and the stress of his homeless period, his renewed sense of purpose and stable housing having restored his physical well-being along with his mental health. His regular medical checkups revealed improvements in stress-related conditions that had worsened during his time on the streets, demonstrating the connection between security and health. Dave's music had been influenced by his friendship with Samuel, with several songs inspired by their relationship and the lessons about human potential that Samuel had taught him. The songs didn't exploit Samuel's story, but reflected the deeper understanding of struggle and resilience that their friendship had provided. Samuel approved of the musical tributes, understanding that art could amplify important messages. The community around the music store where they had met had been transformed by their story, with local businesses developing their own approaches to assisting homeless individuals rather than simply ignoring or discouraging them. Samuel's success had demonstrated that investment in people could yield remarkable returns, inspiring others to look for potential rather than problems when encountering homelessness. Samuel's expertise in peer counseling had evolved into training other professionals about the importance of lived experience in service delivery. Medical schools, social work programs, and counseling training centers began incorporating his insights about the value of personal experience in helping others navigate similar challenges. His influence extended beyond veteran services into broader helping professions. The partnership between Dave and Samuel had created a new model for celebrity philanthropy that emphasized relationship building and collaborative advocacy rather than high-profile donations. Other entertainers began seeking Samuel's advice about effective charitable giving, understanding that his expertise extended beyond veteran issues to include insights about meaningful assistance versus superficial charity. 7 years after their initial meeting, Samuel received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Association of Social Workers for his contributions to peer specialist services and veteran advocacy. Dave presented the award, noting that Samuel's impact had reached thousands of people who would never know his name, but whose lives had been improved by programs he had designed and advocacy he had provided. The award ceremony provided an opportunity to reflect on the extraordinary trajectory that had begun with a simple request for $1. Samuel's acceptance speech emphasized that his success had required not just personal determination, but also the willingness of others to see his potential rather than his problems. He credited Dave's initial recognition with making everything else possible. Dave's remarks at the ceremony focused on what he had learned from Samuel about the difference between helping and empowering, noting that true assistance required seeing people's strengths rather than just their needs. Their friendship had taught him that the most meaningful philanthropy created opportunities for people to contribute their unique expertise rather than simply receiving charity. The ceremony attracted attendees from across the country who had been impacted by Samuel's work or inspired by his story. Veterans who had been helped by his programs, social workers who had learned from his training, and policymakers who had implemented his recommendations gathered to honor someone who had transformed personal struggle into professional expertise and social change. As Samuel approached his 10th year of stable housing and meaningful work, his influence continued expanding through the foundation he and Dave had established. The organization had created opportunities for hundreds of people with lived experience to develop their expertise into professional contributions, demonstrating that personal struggle could become social resource when properly recognized and supported. The foundation's impact extended internationally, with Samuel consulted by organizations in other countries seeking to develop peer specialist programs for their veteran populations. His model of combining lived experience with professional training had proven effective across different cultures and service systems, suggesting universal principles about the value of experiential expertise. Samuel's story had become a case study in social work schools and public policy programs, illustrating the potential for individual transformation to create systemic change. Students learned about the importance of seeing clients as resources rather than problems, understanding that people who had overcome significant challenges possessed valuable insights that should be incorporated into service delivery. Dave's involvement in Samuel's continued success remained consistent, but had evolved to support Samuel's independent leadership rather than providing ongoing assistance. Their relationship demonstrated how initial help could be structured to create independence rather than dependence, with Dave's role shifting from benefactor to collaborator as Samuel's expertise and influence grew. The peer specialist program Samuel had designed was being implemented in over 50 cities nationwide, with outcome data consistently showing superior success rates compared to traditional case management approaches. Samuel's insight that people were more likely to trust and accept help from someone who had walked their path had been validated through rigorous evaluation and had influenced policy at multiple levels of government. As Samuel entered his 80s, his energy for direct service remained strong, but his focus shifted increasingly toward training and mentoring the next generation of peer specialists. His expertise had evolved from personal experience to systematic knowledge about how to transform struggle into strength and how to structure services that recognized and utilized lived experience effectively. The annual conference of the organization Samuel had helped establish drew over 3,000 attendees, including policymakers, service providers, and people with lived experience of homelessness, addiction, and other challenges. Samuel's keynote address each year reminded participants that every person experiencing crisis possessed unique insights that could contribute to solutions if properly recognized and supported. Dave's continued involvement in the conference and the foundation demonstrated his long-term commitment to the relationship and the principles Samuel had taught him about effective assistance. His presence at events attracted media attention that amplified Samuel's message, while ensuring that Samuel remained the primary voice and expert on issues they addressed together. The impact of their partnership could be measured not just in individual lives changed, but in systemic improvements to how society addressed homelessness and veteran issues. Samuel's influence on policy, training, and service delivery had created lasting changes that would continue benefiting people long after his own active involvement ended. A single act of recognition had generated generational impact. Samuel's health began declining as he entered his mid-80s, but his intellectual capacity and passion for his work remained strong. He used his remaining energy to document his insights and ensure that the programs he had developed would continue operating effectively. His legacy was secured not just through individual achievements, but through institutional changes he had created. The question of what would happen to Samuel's programs after his eventual retirement or death had been carefully planned, with multiple protégés trained in his approaches and administrative structures established to ensure continuity. Samuel's greatest achievement was creating sustainable change rather than depending on his personal involvement, ensuring that his innovations would outlive him. The most unexpected development came during Samuel's 85th birthday celebration, when hundreds of people whose lives he had touched gathered to honor him. The event revealed the full scope of his impact, with attendees including veterans he had helped secure housing, social workers he had trained, policymakers whose decisions he had influenced, and family members of people whose lives had been saved by programs he had developed. At the birthday celebration, Dave presented Samuel with a special gift, a scholarship fund established in his name to support people with lived experience who wanted to develop their expertise into professional contributions. The fund would ensure that Samuel's model of transforming personal struggle into social resource would continue helping others long into the future, creating ongoing opportunities for people to follow his path. The scholarship recipients, Stories demonstrated the continuing relevance of Samuel's insights about human potential, with formerly homeless individuals becoming counselors, people in recovery becoming addiction specialists, and former inmates becoming criminal justice advocates. Each scholarship winner represented validation of Samuel's belief that those who had overcome challenges possessed unique qualifications for helping others face similar struggles. Samuel's acceptance speech at his birthday celebration focused on gratitude for the opportunity to transform his most difficult experiences into his greatest contributions. He acknowledged that his success had required both personal determination and community support, emphasizing that individual transformation was possible but required recognition and investment from others willing to see potential rather than problems. The celebration also marked the announcement of Samuel's memoir, co-written with Dave, which would document not just his personal journey but the broader lessons about human potential, effective assistance, and social change that their partnership had revealed. The book would serve as both inspiration and instruction manual for others seeking to create meaningful change through personal relationships and strategic support. As Samuel's active career began winding down, his influence continued expanding through the hundreds of people he had trained and the thousands who had been helped by programs he had designed. His transformation from homeless veteran to national expert had created ripple effects that would continue benefiting people for decades, all tracing back to Dave's decision to stop and listen rather than hurry past. The foundation Samuel and Dave had established was planning its most ambitious project, a national training center where people with lived experience could develop their expertise into professional qualifications. The center would formalize Samuel's insights about experiential knowledge while providing pathways for others to follow his example of transforming struggle into strength and social contribution. Samuel's legacy extended beyond veteran services to influence how society understood and addressed multiple forms of social challenge. His demonstration that personal experience could become professional expertise had implications for addiction treatment, mental health services, criminal justice reform, and other areas where lived experience provided valuable insights that traditional training alone could not match. Dave's role in Samuel's success had evolved from initial benefactor to lifelong collaborator, with their partnership demonstrating how celebrity resources could be most effectively utilized for social change. Their relationship had become a model for strategic philanthropy that created lasting change rather than temporary relief, showing how personal connection could amplify both individual transformation and systematic reform. As Samuel approached his final years, his contentment was evident in his continued engagement with work that utilized all aspects of his life experience. The man who had once asked for a single dollar had become someone whose expertise was sought internationally, whose insights influenced policy at the highest levels, and whose legacy would continue benefiting others long after his own story ended. The training programs Samuel had developed were being adapted for use with other populations, including refugees, formerly incarcerated individuals, and people recovering from addiction. His core insight that those who had overcome challenges possessed unique qualifications for helping others had proven applicable across multiple contexts, suggesting universal principles about the value of lived experience in helping professions. Samuel's influence on Dave had been equally transformative, changing how the musician understood philanthropy, social responsibility, and the potential that existed within every person. Their friendship had taught Dave that the most meaningful assistance required seeing people's strengths rather than just their needs, and that true help created independence rather than dependence. The peer specialist movement that Samuel had helped establish had grown to include thousands of practitioners nationwide, with formal certification programs and professional standards that elevated lived experience to the same level as traditional academic training. Samuel's vision of experiential expertise being recognized and compensated had become reality, creating career pathways for people whose life challenges had developed unique qualifications. The documentary about Samuel's transformation and its broader implications had been shown in social work schools, policy institutes, and community organizations across the country, spreading his insights about human potential and effective assistance to new audiences. The film served as both inspiration and education, demonstrating practical applications of Samuel's insights about recognizing and developing people's strengths. Samuel's story had become more than individual success. It represented proof of concept for approaches to social problems that recognized human potential rather than focusing solely on deficits and problems. His transformation demonstrated that society's most challenging issues might be most effectively addressed by those who had personally experienced and overcome similar struggles. In his final years, Samuel continued working part-time as a consultant and trainer, sharing his expertise with new generations of social workers, policymakers, and peer specialists. His energy remained focused on ensuring that the programs he had developed would continue operating effectively, with his insights preserved and transmitted to those who would carry on his work. Dave's commitment to Samuel's legacy included ongoing financial support for the programs they had developed together, ensuring that lack of funding would never threaten the continuation of work that had proven so effective. Their partnership had demonstrated how sustained investment in human potential could create changes that extended far beyond the original relationship, generating benefits for thousands of people who would never know either of their names. The friendship between Dave and Samuel had become a testament to the power of seeing beyond surface circumstances to recognize the potential that existed within every person. Samuel's transformation from homeless veteran to national expert had required both his personal determination and Dave's willingness to invest in that potential, creating a collaboration that had benefited countless others while enriching both their lives. Samuel's final public appearance was at the 10th anniversary celebration of the Peer Specialist program he had designed, where he was honored not just for his personal journey, but for his professional contributions to social change. His remarks focused on gratitude for the opportunities he had been given and encouragement for others to recognize the potential that existed within their own struggles and challenges. The celebration revealed the full scope of Samuel's influence, with speakers including federal officials whose policies he had shaped, veterans whose lives he had saved, and social workers whose approaches had been transformed by his training. The man who had once been invisible on a Seattle sidewalk had become someone whose insights were sought at the highest levels of government and social service. Dave's tribute to Samuel at the anniversary event emphasized how their friendship had changed his understanding of effective assistance and social responsibility. He shared that Samuel had taught him the difference between charity and investment, between helping and empowering, and between seeing problems and recognizing potential. Their relationship had been transformative for both men in different but equally significant ways. The programs and policies Samuel had influenced continued operating effectively after his retirement, with the peer specialist approach he had championed becoming standard practice in veteran services nationwide. His demonstration that lived experience could be transformed into professional expertise had created lasting changes in how society addressed homelessness, addiction, and other challenges that required both technical knowledge and personal understanding. As Samuel entered his final years, his satisfaction with his life's work was evident in his continued engagement with training and mentoring activities. He had successfully transformed his most difficult experiences into his greatest contributions, proving that personal struggle could become social resource when properly recognized and supported. His legacy would continue benefiting others long after his own story concluded. Today, the Samuel Washington Center for Experiential Expertise trains hundreds of peer specialists annually, with graduates working in veteran services, addiction treatment, mental health programs, and other fields where lived experience provides valuable insights. The center operates on Samuel's principle that those who have overcome significant challenges possess unique qualifications for helping others face similar struggles, formalizing his insights into systematic training and professional development. Dave continues supporting the center and the broader peer specialist movement, using his platform to advocate for approaches that recognize human potential rather than focusing solely on problems and deficits. His philanthropy has been permanently influenced by Samuel's example, emphasizing relationship building and long-term investment in people's capacity to contribute rather than short-term charity that creates dependence. The scholarship fund established in Samuel's name has supported over 300 individuals in developing their lived experience into professional expertise, creating career pathways for people whose personal struggles had developed unique qualifications for helping others. Each scholarship recipient represents continuation of Samuel's legacy and validation of his insights about the value of experiential knowledge in addressing social challenges. Samuel's story has become required reading in social work programs nationwide, illustrating the importance of recognizing clients' strengths and potential rather than focusing solely on their problems and needs. His example demonstrates how effective social services require both professional training and lived experience, with the most successful interventions combining technical knowledge with personal understanding of the challenges being addressed. The impact of Dave and Samuel's partnership extends beyond individual transformation to influence policy, training, and service delivery systems that affect thousands of people annually. Their relationship proved that celebrity resources could be most effectively utilized through personal connection and collaborative advocacy rather than high-profile donations, creating a model for strategic philanthropy that maximizes long-term impact. As the peer specialist movement continues expanding internationally, Samuel's insights about transforming personal struggle into professional strength have influenced approaches to social challenges in dozens of countries. His core principle, that those who have overcome difficulties possess unique qualifications for helping others, has proven applicable across cultures and service systems, suggesting universal truths about human potential and effective assistance. Have you ever walked past someone asking for help without really seeing them as a complete person with untold potential? Have you considered how your own struggles might have developed expertise that could benefit others facing similar challenges? Samuel Washington's transformation from homeless veteran to national expert reminds us that every person possesses unique value and potential that deserves recognition and investment. Sometimes, the difference between despair and hope is simply someone willing to stop, listen, and see possibilities rather than problems. Like, subscribe, and share if you believe in the power of recognizing human potential and the extraordinary changes that can begin with simple acts of genuine recognition and respect.